from our own. We can look at it from our own point of view. That the fourth one is called, oh, hang on, I have to sneeze. The fourth one is, it sounds so funny, it's called joyful effort, or it's called perseverance, or enthusiasm, or enthusiastic perseverance. So it sounds kind of like a bit hyperventilating, doesn't it? Joyful effort. Well, I mean, what's that, you know? Well, we kind of get it. So let's look at this one and look at the benefit of it. So, of course, when they're talking in this way here, they're talking about making, you know, having enthusiasm in practicing Dharma, enthusiasm in changing your mind, enthusiasm in benefiting others. So that's, you know, of course, that's the context. But if we think of it as ordinary life, we know perfectly well, I've got to sneeze again, that without enthusiasm, think about it, you'll not lift a finger to do anything, right? So of course, we know in our daily lives, we're talking about enthusiasm to get the chocolate cake, to follow attachment, blah, 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 you know, but let's just look at the quality and we can understand it. So I know the Lamas always say, and they say in these teachings, and it's really obvious if you look at it psychologically, if you don't have enthusiasm for something, of course you won't do it. Why would you, you know? And then, and this is where we can see when we have a lot of suffering and problems, when we don't have enthusiasm for something and we feel we have to do it. I mean, can you imagine the terrible tension that builds up in our mind? And this is much of our suffering in daily life, you know? Let's say you've got a job that you hate, which means you've got aversion, which means you wish it would go away, which means you can't stand it, which means it's the opposite of attachment. And that's a lot of tension in the mind. It's really stressful in the mind, isn't it? Having aversion when there's something you don't like. And this is not uncommon in relationships, in jobs. But you feel you have to do it because you need the money, because you know, blah, blah, blah. This is awful. So there's this terrible tension, isn't there? And we feel it's insurmountable. We feel, you know, you've got to go to work. So you build up this, I mean, to the point where people have mental collapse because this tension is too much to bear. So we've got to see we've got some choices, you know, and this is kind of intense. We talk about this all the time. When we feel hopeless, when we feel we don't have a choice, and this is one of the ways we suffer so terribly, when the lousy job, whatever it might be, we feel we've got no choice. We feel we have to go to the job, and two, we don't imagine that we can change our mind. We don't imagine, we can't see that we can stop having aversion for it. This is the huge part. And this is why there's so much tension and suffering and anxiety in our daily lives, you know. But I mean, of course, this aversion works at a really subtle level, doesn't it? So then if we're talking about our practice, but even just use your ordinary daily life in terms of achieving a goal. Let's say you trying to become a musician. Okay, I realize that all these usually are driven by attachment. But use it as an ordinary example. If you don't realize the benefit of doing something, then of course this tension will build up if you feel you have to do it. So this is why, even from the point of view of your simple job, if you've made the decision, I have to do it because I need the money and I can't see any other options right now, then we have to see that to our own advantage, it's to our advantage to change our attitude towards the job. I mean, we've talked about this in other ways. We talk about it in the past in different ways, but this is one approach. But it's for our own benefit. It's not some moralistic issue. Oh, I should like my job. No, for your own benefit. Do you want to be happy or not? You know, do you want to be happy or not? Do you want to have happy feelings or not? Do you want to keep building up this awful tension? That means if you've chosen to have that job, you've decided, okay, at the moment, this is the job I've got. I can't see any other options. I do need the money. Then you've got only other choice is to change your mind and to try to see, in other words, to see the benefits of the job, even if it's, you know, the lack of benefit, which is why you have aversion to it. You can't stand the people. You can't stand the tasks. It's boring. The boss is mean. I mean, look at the different reasons. They might be true, but to your own advantage, see the benefits of it. It's another way of putting it. It's another way of deciding to take responsibility and realize you can change your mind, you know, to see the advantages of it. Then when you wake up in the morning and you remember your job and you think of the good things, You know the bad things are there, but you think of the good things. So you get all perky, you get excited, you get enthusiastic. That's fantastic. But we've got to realize we've got the choice to do this. But of course, it's hard. So look in your daily life. Okay, so we talk about, I'm trying to practice Dharma, I'm trying to work on my mind, I'm trying to do my practice every day. And there's always this tension because we have aversion. We don't like discipline. We don't like making effort. So let's analyze what it even means to make effort. It's a really interesting word. Well, they talk about the opposites. That when they talk about enthusiastic perseverance, it's really helpful to understand what the opposite attitude is. And this is quite surprising to us, but it's called laziness. And this is a big shock. What do you mean laziness? We're very shocked to hear that, but listen to it and you will see the logic. It's very fascinating. This is why more and more we have to unpack what goes on in our mind. Because we're so familiar with the way the things happen in our mind, and we're so familiar with the feelings, and we see them as set in stone, we have to unpack them. That's what being your own therapist means, to go inside and unpack what you feel, And of course, we're using Buddhist psychological model here. You can use Jung if you like, whoever you wish. So let's look at this laziness business. The sort of 2 or 3 levels, depends how you say it. But we'll recognize each one exactly. Well, the first one is the most obvious. Laziness is the attitude of, I can't be bothered. Again, think of the ordinary example of going to the gym, even though that's called, that's samsaric example, but get the point. In beginning, you're all excited and you get excited to go to the gym. You've got enthusiasm. Why? Because you've seen the people who've turned their bodies into marvelous sculpted bodies and you get really excited. I want to do that too. And we're just talking ordinary here, ordinary samsara. So you get excited, you get enthusiastic. But what happens? You go to the gym on the first evening after work, you go to the gym on the second evening, and by the third evening, you're driving home from work. Of course, we don't drive home from work these days. We're at home all the time, maybe. But let's say you're driving home from work, and 2 days ago, you're enthusiastic about the gym. You were, quote unquote, looking forward to it. But now what? Oh, no, And then, oh, no, I can't be bothered. Not tonight. I can't be bothered. We understand this one. So what is the thing? Analyze it. What is the thing you can't be bothered doing? Analyze this. It's so clear. It's the thing that you don't know how to do. By definition, you only have to make effort in the things you don't know how to do. So you're not used to the gym yet. You've got to go there and push against your comfort zone. You've got to push and sweat and walk and do your machine, whatever it is. And it's called making effort, isn't it? So analyze that even more. What is the thing you have to make effort to do? It's the thing you can't do. Another way to put it is, what's the obstacle to that? It's called attachment to your comfort zone. I mean, we talk about attachment in so many ways. You can see it. It's primordial. Attachment to being loved. We talk about this a lot. It's the most painful one. Attachment to be approved of. Attachment to food. Attachment to sex. Attachment to video games. Whatever your trip might be. But this one is like the deepest. It's the attachment to your comfort zone. And that means doing the analysis in Buddhist psychology, when it comes to, we either have pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, or neutral feelings. There's a very specific use of the term here, feeling, not like an emotion. We all know we definitely only want pleasant feelings. And then you analyze it second by second. Attachment's job is to find the object, the cake, the thing, the sound, the smell, the position of the mattress in bed, to get it to be right so that I can get a pleasant feeling. That's how we live our lives. That's what samsara is. Nothing wrong with having pleasant feelings. Don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater. Buddha's telling you, I've got great methods for getting in blissful feelings. You can't believe it. But we're looking at the way we are now. So then attachment is a junkie that only wants pleasant feelings. So of course, if you go to the gym and you're going against attachment's wishes, you've got to push yourself past that comfort zone, don't you? So of course, you will not do that unless you know the benefits of going to the gym. If in the beginning, you're all excited, but after 3 days, the excitement disappears and you sink back into your comfort zone again. And then, suddenly you look and you think, what the hell happened to the gym? We understand this, but we've got to do the analysis. And it's not magical. So then and the other thing is, we admire the people at the gym who come every day, who've got enthusiasm, and then you see the shape of their body and they've achieved their goal. You know, wow, it's possible. Look at that. So we're just talking the gym here. Forget about molding your mind to the mind of a Buddha. Wow. So attachment's always the problem. Comes right down to it. But it's so instinctive, isn't it? We don't like making effort. So of course, you will not even bother to make effort unless you think of the benefits. It's such a simple point. That's why for that job, you've made a decision, you can't give the job up. So in order, for your own mind's sake, you've got two options: change the job, change your mind. It's so brutal, but it's the necessary analysis we have to do to grow up, to take responsibility. And who is the beneficiary of this? Nobody else. You are the beneficiary. So then you can decide to see the benefits, even if there's only 3 benefits to that job. The boss you can't stand, the colleagues don't like you, but you've got a good salary, let's say. Then you think of the salary every day. Then that becomes the reason you want to hop out of bed and go to your job. But it's up to you to decide to see it like that. It's a tough one. And then who do you think is the beneficiary? You'll have less tension in your mind. You won't have such aversion, because, doing something you have aversion for is the source of complete mental breakdown unless you change the aversion. But we don't think we can. That's why living in a relationship with a husband you can't stand, because you're full of guilt and shame, and I can't leave him. No, the kids won't like me. The world will criticize me. I shouldn't do this. You have all these reasons why you think you can't leave the relationship, but you don't realize you can change your mind if you've decided to stay in the relationship. So what do? We don't change our mind. We build up the aversion every day until you either kill yourself or kill the husband. What's the advantage to that? I mean, this is hard work, but it's possible. We don't think it's possible. We think it's like completely impossible to change our thoughts. Why should I? He should change, we think, So when you see the benefits of staying in that relationship, even if the benefit is that it's good practice for you to practice patience, and you've got to be advanced to think that, then you're going to start to have a happy mind. Guess what? And there won't be the tension. The tension comes from when, you think one thing and you have to do another. It's going to smash up against. And so you'll get to the point where you'll go crazy. But we don't realize we can change our mind. This is what's so outrageous. It always comes down to this in Buddhist view, So the first kind of laziness is it can't be bothered. Can't be bothered. Too much effort. And the thing you have too much effort, that takes too much effort, is the thing that attachment doesn't want, because it goes against your comfort zone. But when you have enthusiasm for the gym, you know this. You love going against your comfort zone. I know when I was into Kung Fu. I like martial arts since I was like 30. Late 20s until I was like 40. I did martial arts at different times, The latest time was when I was living in London and I was a nun. I was like early 40s. And I used to wear lay clothes at that point when I was working for Wisdom Publications in London. This is in the mid-80s. Mid-80s. And I was like early 40s. And I remember I started Kung Fu again. And it was incredibly good for my mind. I loved Kung Fu. And I was a really good teacher. So I'd go 6 days a week because I've got enthusiasm, enthusiasm. So I'd go to 6 days a week, and because I saw that I'm talking as ordinary samsara again, but I saw the benefits. I also saw the benefits to my mind, because it's discipline, and I like that kind of strong discipline. We've all got different systems, right, that we like. I tried yoga when I was about 19. At that time, we used to wear black leotards. It was very old fashioned. Black leotards. I remember this place in Melbourne, this Indian lady taught yoga. It was most unusual, 1962 or something. And I thought it was too boring. And then I did Kung Fu over those years. And when I was living in San Francisco, like 10 years ago, maybe, more than 10 years ago, and I was about in my late 60s at that point, more than 10 years ago. And I thought I'd try yoga again, because I couldn't cope with doing Kung Fu again. Doing 30 push-ups on my knuckles was just too much to bear, I didn't have that much amount of enthusiasm with that intense amount of physical energy at the age of 67. So I thought, I'll try yoga again, So I found this nice gym down by the water in a club, in San Francisco, and they had yoga class at 6 o'clock. So I had this little red motor scooter. I bought this little red motor scooter. I remember this actually. I went to Vespa. There's another story now. I went to Vespa to buy a motor scooter. They wouldn't sell me one because I was less than 5'2". Can you imagine? I was less than 5'2", so they refused to sell me a motor scooter. I was only 5 feet, you see. So I bought this cute little Italian one. And I'd bop around San Francisco. I hadn't ridden a motorcycle for 40 years. I used to ride a big Honda. So I had this cute little red motor scooter. So I boppled down on with my little mat, whatever I had, at 6 a.m. for the yoga class. And I went to my first yoga class and I left after 10 minutes. I could not cope. I'm not being rude about yoga. Some people it's perfect, but I couldn't stand all this kind of, I don't know, feel the breath in your bottom or something. I'm not being sarcastic. I am being sarcastic. I just didn't suit my nature, but I was too old. I couldn't cope with the thought of Kung Fu again. Anyway, never mind. What am I talking about? So when I was into Kung Fu at my mid-40s, and it was hilarious, actually, because Mr. Lee was our teacher. I was a nun, but I had hair and I was wearing lay clothes. So me and two other boys, one was 14 and one was 19. And there I was, a 43-year-old, 44-year-old Buddhist nun. They didn't know I looked younger than I was. They just thought I was this woman, this girl. We were the three favorite students. We'd go to all 6 classes. We'd hang out after classes. And it was in London. We'd go to Chinatown and see all the Kung Fu movies and go to McDonald's and eat chips afterwards. 4 pounds of chips, right? Because you need your carbs. They didn't know I was a 43-year-old Buddhist nun. They would have been quite shocked. They didn't quite know what I was, but we were the 3 little musketeers. It was hilarious. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I had enthusiasm. So what that means is, even though it was samsara, but it was also good for my mind, I enjoyed that 2 hours of intense sweating, pushing, on our knuckles, doing our push-ups on our knuckles, and you're exhausted. You can't imagine you can do another push-up. And then Mr. Lee screaming, "It's only your body." So it's like you have enthusiasm, and then when you have enthusiasm, your mind is joyful. It's sort of obvious. So it's hard to get it, but you've got to start somewhere. That means you've got to analyze the process and start seeing the benefits first. Even if you can find one benefit, then you will begin to have enthusiasm. You will begin to make the effort and go beyond your comfort zone. And you know very well, you don't progress in anything until you start making that effort. So if you go to the gym every day, and then as soon as you start sweating, or as soon as your heart starts beating, you stop. And then you say, "Oh, I went to the gym today." Well, you didn't. You're lying. You only went to the gym when the effort hurts, when the breathing gets strong, when the heart beats faster, because that's when the change will happen to your body. Well, it's exactly the same with our minds, Of course, it's much harder because we can't stand aversion. We can't stand emotional pain. We'll do everything in our power to walk away from it, This is just the first kind of laziness. The second, more sneaky, more wicked, and our worst enemy of all is called too busy, I'll do it later. Procrastination. This is our worst crime against ourselves, because we think it's a virtue. So what happens is, you think of the thing you're supposed to do, and the next instantaneous millisecond, you go, "Oh, I can't be bothered." But then another lie on top says, "But I'll do it later." So you think you get yourself off the hook. It's a lie. Later never comes. And so what happens in the end, you build up year after year and you carry this burden like a turtle with their house on their back of all the should do's. And then it's such a burden. That's the pain of not doing. And then, when you finally do decide to get that thing and to do that job you've been putting off for years, it took you 30 minutes. You can't believe it. And the relief is enormous. And you feel so good about yourself. We know that, but that's that crucial point where you say can't be bothered, and then you say I'll do it later. I'm too busy. You sound virtuous, This happens with our practice. It's one of the commonest things that we all talk about. You go to your course, you do your meditation course, you get enthusiasm, you start doing your evening meditation, your morning meditation. You get up in the morning before you go to work and you do your practice and you feel so good. You've got enthusiasm. You sort of have thought about the benefits. By the third morning, just like the gym, you wake up and you can't be bothered. You're in your comfort zone. It's really hard to get up in the morning, isn't it? Because you just want to either sink back into sleep. And then you go, then you lie to yourself and you say, well, I'm too busy. I've got my breakfast and I've got my thing. But if I sleep a bit longer, then I'll do my practice later. And then you go, oh, what a relief. And you go back to sleep. It's a lie because you don't do it later. You won't do it later. All you've done is create aversion in your mind, create this tension, and then you carry this burden around with you, all the shoulds. The lamas all say, and they're always so dramatic. They're sort of very fundamentalist way they talk, these Tibetan lamas, I think, how they talk in their culture. We need to be much more gentle. We have to be more soft with ourselves. We're sort of not so brave, They say, I mean, no, never mind that. So just we can see, though, the burden of things we should do. We want to do, we know we want to do them, we should do them, but we put it off. But it's so painful. You can see this. And I mean, for example, in my life, I'm a so-called Buddhist nun. I do my job. I teach the Dharma. I edit the Dharma. I answer letters from people about the Dharma. So aren't I lucky that my life is about the Dharma? I'm very fortunate. I'm glad. I'm happy. It's what I want, But I have jobs on my computer. I have my jobs to do. I have a little list. We've got our own systems, don't we, of all the jobs we have to do. Or it's in your mind, or you have a little list. I do little lists, But there are certain jobs for years now that I put off. And then it becomes a habit. But it's also quick, like in a millisecond, you're saying to yourself, I'll do that later. And then suddenly a week later, 2 weeks later, there's the job still undone. Like today, I'm just going, and it's really takes time. This is why someone like the Dalai Lama or someone like Lama Zopa, these accomplished people who've got supreme enthusiasm, there's no such thing as putting things off. This is why anybody we know, forget the Dalai Lama, anyone we know in ordinary life who accomplishes lots of things is because they don't put things off. We see that. They can accomplish 20 times more because we spend more effort putting things off and then feeling guilty and dragged down by it. And constantly talking to ourselves, constantly feeling guilty, constantly then telling ourselves off and building up this tension in our mind. We understand this so well, every one of us, So what's the solution? You just keep doing it. You keep trying. You keep making the effort. You just keep deciding. You make a decision. Today, I'm going to do a little bit. But don't be dramatic. I'm going to do 4 hours of practice every morning. No, that's ridiculous. Start with 5 minutes. Be humble and reasonable. That's part of the thing. We get all overexcited in the beginning and you see yourself losing 20 kilos in 1 week, and then you get depressed because you haven't succeeded, and then you give up altogether. So you have to be reasonable and humble and gradual and incremental with yourself. That's important. And then delight that you've done it. Rejoice in it. Not because we love to be we're our own worst enemies. My mother used to say that, and it's so true. This is the irony of ego, isn't it? We beat ourselves up mercilessly. Oh, I don't practice hard enough. I mean, once you start talking that way, no matter how much you do, you'll never be satisfied. So be humble about it. So if you decide you're going to do some practice every day, and you don't have many commitments to do anything, you start with 5 minutes. At least you start with 5 minutes and you do something every day. It will build inexorably. It will build up. Not, oh, I'm going to practice for 4 hours. Then you're going to collapse, But that's not the subtlest laziness yet. There's even one more subtle. And this is the major, and it doesn't sound like laziness to us. It sounds kind of mean to call it laziness, but listen to this one. The third one, the major enemy, the worst one, the one that prevents us from doing anything. And it goes, I can't do that. That's not possible. I can't achieve that. No, not possible. I'm not capable. That is odd to call it laziness, but it's interesting to call it that because we believe that with absolute certainty, don't we? And we say it as if it's virtue, as if it's humility. No, it's not. It's just getting us off the hook from making an effort, Because when you understand, you see, part of our problem is we don't understand interdependence. And interdependence is understanding emptiness. And by definition, that is difficult. So it's a bit catch-22. But when we understand that things are incremental, growth is gradual. Our mummies tell us that Rome wasn't built in a day. Our mummies tell us that everything starts with the first step. We know all these wonderful cliched statements that are profoundly true. But when we've got a lot of ego grasping, a lot of, delusion, strong ego grasping with strong attachment, strong aversion, strong guilt, we can't hear that. We go to it's like if two kids go to see Serena Williams play tennis, and one goes, and we both go, oh, wasn't she amazing? And one goes, wow, I can do that. And the other one goes, nah, that's not possible. I couldn't do that. So you've got to start with the thought, it's possible. You've got to have that thought. You won't move 1 inch if you don't have the thought, I can do it, that it's possible. And that implies understanding it's incremental. It implies it's 1 step at a time. one step at a time. You pave the way. It's one step at a time. This is the meaning of interdependence. It's the meaning of incremental, gradual, progressive. These words are delicious, you know. So it's like, and it's humble, because you realize it's one step at a time. One step at a time. You do a little tiny bit. And what that means is you realize that that little moment that you do something today, it won't bring the end result immediately. That first day at the gym, you come home, in fact, after the first day at the gym, and I'm speaking here about the mental gym as well. You come home from the gym, not only do you not look any less fat, you actually feel worse, but you know the pain is good. You know the pain is good because now you're making an effort. You've now started. And that is enough to make us blissful. We have to remember this, but we forget it because we keep judging by the results. You know, we want good feelings now. We are junkies for good feelings now. That's attachment's job. Attachment's a junkie that wants it all this second. And if it's not there this second, we have this panic attack. We can't see it's a process. We can't see it's progressive. We can't see it's incremental. We can't see that it's gradual. That's an understanding of dependent arising in the simplest way. It's like your garden, all the analogies I like to use. You've got an overgrown garden full of weeds and junk. It's true. It is a garden full of weeds and junk. That's our mind right now, let's say. But you've found, this is the other point, you know there are methods. If you don't know there are methods for turning your big messy thing out there into a beautiful garden, then you're right to be depressed. If you've got a crazy mind right now and you don't have any methods, then you're right to be depressed. It's just hit and miss, cross your fingers. That's how we feel in our culture. We don't believe there are methods to help us become less neurotic and more happy. Not a mental job. We don't believe, we think it's all out there, you know. So we've got botany. So once you know there is botany, once you've thought about botany, and once you've seen other examples of other people's gardens, you use that to help you get enthusiastic because you realize I've got the method and that's what my garden can be looking like. So then you start the work. Now you come home after you go back inside after your first day of gardening, the garden probably looks even worse because you've been digging up all the dirt. It looks even worse, but you're happy because you started the process. That's humility, you know, but we just identify with the bad feelings. We're such junkies for good feelings. We can't stand having bad feelings. So we panic, you know. So the fact is we can do it. The methods are all there. That's why it's important to study the teachings, not just have emotional feelings, I like Buddhism, but to study the logic of it. The Buddha's teachings are incredible in showing the logic of what the mind is and how it can change. So having that confidence, seeing the benefits of working on your mind, even though it's intensely painful, like the gym, but you are happy to do it. And then inevitably one day you start to actually feel good. You rejoice, but you've got to cause yourself to have happy feelings about it first. Rejoice, you know, I'm happy. I did my practice today. I'm glad I did it. It's, you know, it's just so huge for the mind, so helpful when you do that thing you've been putting off, you know. So what do you think, you people? Ask me some questions now. I mean, this is so-called Buddhist advice because it's all structured there, but it's all common sense, isn't it? We all hear it.
Hi, Veneral.
Hello.
This is Greg. How are you?
Hello, Greg.
Good. Thank you. It's great to see you this morning. I just had a couple comments kind of 5 minutes before I walked in here. I was walking my dogs and it's kind of gross, but my dog likes to go in a certain area where there are other dogs who go. And my wife says, what kind of person does that? You know, who thinks it's okay, you know, to do that? And I said, it's just laziness, you know.
So I'm confused though. What are you saying? I don't know what the
somebody lets their dog crap all over in a certain area in our neighborhood.
Oh, you mean that's not supposed to be done, you mean?
No, you're supposed to pick it.
Oh, you're supposed to pick it up. Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes. I don't have a dog, so that's right. Yes. So then what's the point?
When you walk your dog, you're supposed to pick up after.
Okay.
Some people
don't. What's the question?
Well, it's not a question. I just wanted to say that
what do you want to say?
What I said was it's laziness. It's not that people don't care about that. It's that laziness makes you do things that aren't up to your standards, including taking care of the things that you need to take care of, like picking up your dog.
Okay. All right.
So anyways, it just cleanly played into this. Yeah, I thought it was 5 minutes before I came.
It's a good point, Greg. Thank you so much. It's true. You're right. Then you can go in your mind, then you can go, thank you for showing me my laziness. Then it becomes a learning. Well done. That's it. Who else? Anything in the chat box, Anna? Oh, there's Vanessa. Hello, sweetheart.
Hi,
Hello,
I have
Vanessa. Happy to see you, darling.
good to see you. I have a couple questions, but I'll start with one. The last few months, since my mom passed away, in the beginning, I had issues with my stepdad over her estate, which she left to her kids, but my stepdad was the executor, meaning he was the one to disperse it. He got greedy and he wanted some of it, and we reluctantly agreed to it just so that he can hand over her house.
Of course, that's
right. You know, I've been, and he doesn't need the money because he has enough, but I just been battling, like regretting it and feeling resentful that I, let him off easy.
I understand. That's right.
Yeah. And I try to see the emptiness and see, it's just money, even though it's a big chunk,
So, I mean, so you all just, the siblings decided you'd give him some money after all. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's all done now. It's all done now.
It is. Yeah.
So then now I think this is part of the thing, Vanessa. If you were still in the process of making a decision, then it's a good discussion to have. But seeing as the deed is done, you have to I think there's no choice but to practice letting go of it. There's no choice, because you'll just torture yourself, and you know that. If you still had to make the decision, let's have the conversation. But there's absolutely no benefit in having the conversation. The only solution you have is to give it up, isn't it? The only solution you have is to accept that you've made this decision. I mean, would you agree with that?
I do, just because it's better to move on.
That's right, because you can't, unless you start fighting now and legally demanding he give it back to you. That's your only other option. And that's not an option, is it? You don't want to do that, do you?
It's too much. I've thought about it, but it just seems too much stress.
Effort. That's exactly right. So the only option you've got is to really, every time it arises, and this is where it takes time. And this is the really powerful practice, actually, because, once it starts festering in your head and you let it keep going, every day it builds up until you go crazy. So it's now is that you've got to cut it. You've got to nip it in the bud. You've got to do that, Vanessa. And it's a really powerful teaching. It's a really powerful practice. You've got to do that every day. Don't let your mind get involved in the conversation. You have to stop it. And for whose benefit, honey child? Your benefit. You'll go nuts otherwise. That's the advice, darling, and it's a crucial piece of advice. You've got unless you decide to get the money back, you've got two options, and you don't want to do that.
No.
And it was but it wasn't an unbearable amount, or was it? You feel was it too big a sacrifice?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think I'm fine without it. I can survive.
Okay, so, you've got to let go of it. You've got no choice, Vanessa. You shouldn't talk about it to your sisters and siblings. You've got to let it go for your own sake. I mean, the deed is done, isn't it? This is the whole point. Once something has finished, there's no choice but to move forward. That's the hard part, but you'll be so grateful if you can do that.
Okay.
I swear to you. Talk about effort. You've really got to make effort to do that one. Would you agree with that, Vanessa?
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
You've got to catch it once the conversation starts. You've got to catch it and talk to yourself. Leave it alone, Vanessa, and try to think of happy things. Try to think, I'm glad I did it. I practiced generosity. I'm so pleased. And I'm sure my mum will be happy as well. Something like this to give you some reasons why it's good that you did it. Be glad you've been generous, even if you felt bullied into it. Doesn't matter, because you must do this, Vanessa, for your own sake, sweetheart. But you must not talk about it to the others. You've got to not keep it as a conversation between all of you, because you'll go crazy. Do you understand that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. What's the other going?
My other question is, I have a very exhausting job, but I love it.
That's right, exactly. Your nursing job, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm just
become a nurse recently. It's wonderful.
Yeah. When I'm done with my 3 or 2 in a row shifts, the next day I have off, I'm so lazy. I can't move. I can't do anything.
But you're resting. That's okay. You're resting.
Okay. I just feel like what's the fine line between
the attitude towards this is that's a really important one when it comes to also doing things gradually. I talked about this recently somewhere, I think. One of our lamas, who was an incredible yogi in his cave, meditating day and night, he says, when you practice, like when you work, you really work hard. And then when you relax, you really relax. So don't have any guilt about it. Just really relax and realize, okay, I've done this job. I'm trying to help others. Now I've got to relax from the exhaustion and really relax and maybe have a sleep and go and enjoy and walk, but don't have guilt. That's absurd. Think that you're relaxing so that you'll be ready to do the job again the next day. So then you really relax well and you work well, and then both become part of your practice. It becomes, so in terms of like practicing to work on your mind as well, like when you're doing a retreat, it's like this. You're really intensively doing your sessions every day. And then when you have your breaks, you really relax. And the reason to relax is so you're ready for the next session. It becomes part of your overall practice, not something you're doing with guilt. You know, don't do like that. That's unnecessary, darling. Completely unnecessary. Do you understand? So important.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. That's a good point. Who else, darlings? Anything else there, Anna?
Nothing in the chat box, Venerable.
Okay, good. So nothing about this laziness one. So the first kind is can't be bothered. And the thing you can't be bothered doing is what attachment doesn't want. Attachment to our comfort zone. This is primordial. The next one, which is tricky, the sneaky one on top. Oh, I'm too busy. And so let's talk more about that one. You know, like say it's your practice. Let's say you have got a busy life. You've got kids, you've got a job, you've got this, you've got that. And so, you know, you start getting up a bit early for your practice. But then suddenly, you know, so there's different options. So for example, Vanessa's one, let's say you've got your daily job and you've got 2 shifts and you really don't have much time to do your practice. So my feeling is instead of saying, oh, I'll do it later, it's better to do something, but do it for 5 minutes. Keep it going, you know, don't collapse the system. You just do a short practice and you'll still feel glad about that. You did it, you know, you did something. That's important. But you just give it up and then make yourself feel like you're being virtuous because you won't do it later. You're putting it off because you have aversion to it. You don't want to do it. So notice that, be aware, catch yourself and realize, yeah, I've got 2 shifts coming up, but I still want to do something. So even if you just do your water bowls, if you go to regular practice, I will do 5 minutes. This is profound. This is helpful because you keep it going and you're being sincere with yourself. But on the other hand, if you're just being plain old lazy and you could get up early and do your practice first, then you be honest. At least the first step is to be honest with yourself and notice you're just putting it off. You've got to notice what you're doing. You've got to notice the mistake in your mind. You've got to own it, you know, and catch yourself. And you'll go, because the thing is, we say, oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later. I've got to go to breakfast. I've got to do this. I've got to have my shower. I've got to put, you know, comb my hair and put my lipstick on, whatever. In other words, you have to decide what you prioritize, and it's your decision to prioritize what you think is important. So if you really do appreciate this, well, you've got to think of the benefit of your practice, the long-term benefit, then you will budget it into your time schedule. You will, and you will do it. So in other words, you don't get up in the morning and then, you know, and you climb in the car. I mean, ladies don't have curlers in their hair. Maybe we still wear curlers in our hair. I don't know, but I'm just pretending. You don't get in the car with your curlers in your hair and you're still in your nightie, in your pajamas. Oh, I was too busy because I did my practice. I don't think so. We always make sure we put our curlers out and put our lippy on and have our shower and eat and drink our coffee. We don't put those off. So just see how we're lying to ourselves. You know, we're lying. You've got to decide what is your priority. You have to be in charge of it. Don't blame the thing, you know, got to be adult about it. I remember one time I was a bit mean to a friend of mine. This is years and years and years ago in Sydney. And this friend, she'd moved to a house about 30 miles from the centre, right? And of course, she's got kids and she's got a busy life. Of course she has. And every time I'd see her, she'd always kind of, oh, I'm so sorry. I feel guilty. I didn't come to the teachings last week. It's like, in other words, she just felt guilty about that she didn't come to the teachings. Well, first of all, I never expected her to come to the teachings, but she would say that. But, you know, but then I said to her, I was a bit tricky and I said, because basically what she was doing was, yes, she was busy. So not even saying I really am too busy and it is too difficult for me to go to the teachings, but she sort of felt guilty about it. Oh, I'll do it later. I'll go next week. And that's not being very helpful. So I said to her, if there was a check for $500 at the center, would you go? Of course she said yes. Because, and this is not being mean, but we know the benefits of $500. It's very hard to see the benefits of going to the teachings. I'm not saying she should. You can still say, I am busy and I will not go to the teachings, but I'll do it another way. But you're sort of being guilty about it and all this tension, you know. But if there'd been $500 check, listen to this. She'd say, hop into the car, kids, and we'll go to the center. You've got, with a happy mind, you'll drive 30 miles, you'll come 30 miles back. You made the effort because you saw the benefits. So we've got to be, in other words, we've got to be honest with ourselves. Maybe you really are too busy, but be honest with yourself. Don't just, I'll put it off. That's just copping out, putting it in the back, you know, it's no good. We've got to be very sincere with ourselves, catch our mind, not be tricked by our own nonsense. That's the key point. And then make a firm decision. So like, you know, Vanessa's one about relaxing, be lazy all day. Don't call it lazy, call it relaxing, Vanessa. It's intense working in a hospital, especially 2 shifts. God heavens, that's intense. So you own it. I'm going to really relax today. And this is also the other point. This is the Mahayana one about the bodhicitta motivation, a pure motivation. Like I said to Vanessa, the motivation for relaxing is so that you can do your work better. So the motivation for doing any job that's not, you know, if you're a really pure practitioner, like these great yogis who literally meditate day and night, you know, they're totally, their lives are 100% Dharma because they're highly evolved. But for most of us, we're not like that. We need to relax. We need to sleep, eat, and go to the toilet. We're not that qualified. So then instead of feeling guilty about it, relaxing, watching Netflix, like one of my friends on one of the classes, she said, oh, how can I feel good? How can I watch Netflix with a good motivation? Well, you've got 2 choices. Watch Netflix with a bad motivation, which is guilt and laziness and attachment, or watch Netflix with a good motivation. Good heavens, which is preferable? So you do it, whatever you do that isn't labeled Dharma, you do it with a pure motivation. I'm going to watch Netflix so I can relax, so I can become a better person, so I can help others. I mean, this is not a joke, you know, but we feel guilty. Like Vanessa's point, we feel guilty about relaxing. We call it laziness. It's called relaxing, but we've got to do it consciously. Then it becomes a virtuous action, Vanessa. Otherwise, it's just kind of copping out. Virtuous action is an action motivated by a positive motivation. So whether you meditate with the wish to become a better person, or whether you relax with the wish to become a better person, they each become a virtuous action. It's very skillful to hear this, but we've got to be accountable. We've got to think about this. Not just kind of, we all the time, ego tries to get ourselves off the hook, you know. Oh, I'm allowed to relax. I work so hard. We kind of feel guilty as if someone's going to judge us. We're in charge. No one's judging. Well, if they judge, that's their business. We are the boss, you know. So then do whatever we do, sleeping, eating, going to the toilet. I mean, I always joke about Lama Zopa because he never sleeps. And I remember one time Venerable Roger, his attendant, said for Lama Zopa, sleep is a disgusting waste of time. I mean, good Lord, who's like at that level? Not me. That's a fact. I love my bed. So then instead of feeling guilty about sleeping, relaxing, I say to myself as I hit the pillow, may I find sleep disgusting. So then that doesn't mean now I get all tense. I have to have my sleep now. I'm not that qualified. But by having the thought, may I find sleep disgusting, maybe by next life, I will wake up and not have much wish to sleep and have lots of enthusiasm, because things go in the mind and you sow seeds, you know. So I'm sowing the seeds to find sleep disgusting. Why not? I'd love to have enthusiasm to work day and night and to be marvelous like the great yogis, you know. So we've got to be authentic with ourselves and accountable and brave and catch our thoughts. Like I said to Vanessa, to catch, another thing about the first point she brought up, catch it and stop that, cut it, nip it in the bud. And always in these types of examples, you are the beneficiary. You are the beneficiary, you know. It's really important. What else, people? Anything else? 1:45, we have 15 minutes. No other things to bring up today. Yes, sweetheart.
Yes.
Yes, Justin, darling.
I'm very much an extremist, and I do things like 100% or like not at all, which causes me not to be able to multitask. Like I do like 5 things really well, and then everything else is just like snooze fest.
I understand.
Yeah. Is that laziness?
I think it can be an aspect of laziness, yes. But, you know, but that's okay. We've all got different personality. I'm a bit like that as well. I'm a bit of fanatic. It's either 6 days a week of Kung Fu or none. You know, that's a bit, I'm the similar. So so then if the things if you look at your life and the things that you do nothing at all, and they're the things that you think you should do, then you got to look at it. you know. So often the moment with us, until we're highly advanced, until we've actually given up attachment, which is a really very advanced yogi, we've all got attachment until we're highly advanced. So we've got to remember that much of our enthusiasm at the moment, even for something virtuous, is still driven by a lot of attachment, Justin. So then that's the reason it becomes so extreme, you know, because if everything that you were doing were virtuous and were valid and were helping you become a Buddha, then, you know, you'd do it more reasonably and you'd have the same enthusiasm for all the things. But no, but you still have to practice it. So if there are certain things you do not at all, which are things you think you should do and like to do, then you've got to start somewhere and be more reasonable. And notice that it's attachment. That it's attachment's the problem. Of course, if there's no attachment, you'd only have enthusiasm, there'd be nothing else. So you just observe your mind, try and distinguish the attachment component, which is why most of us have any enthusiasm right now. It's because we can see the benefits of doing something we're attached to, isn't it? Do you understand? Good, thanks, Justin. But it's okay, use that often we talk about trying to be balanced. I disagree with that. I mean, if I look at Lama Zopa, he's a total fanatic. He's a complete fanatic Buddhist practitioner. I mean, balance, we tend to think balance means a little bit of bad and a little bit of good. That's a load of rubbish. We want, we be a fanatic, nothing wrong, but be a fanatic in terms of practicing virtue and goodness and wisdom and clarity and kindness. That's pretty good. You understand? Good, Justin. What else, sweethearts? Any other points? Of course,
nothing in the chat, Venerable.
Okay, so the key to all of this, always the key to this, is knowing our mind, being so clear, watching our thoughts like a hawk, knowing, is it delusion, is it virtue? And this is a tough job, but this is the essential job. Constantly, it's like if you're practicing playing the piano, if you're practicing making a cake, you're watching it like a hawk every second. You're judging what you're doing as you're going along, not judging in a negative sense, but you're assessing what you're doing because you need to grow, to get the cake, to make the music. You're always assessing it. That's what we should be doing with our mind, not in an obsessive, neurotic, crazy way, not like that. But knowing ourselves, being very clear, using this part of our mind called discrimination, which is an ability to distinguish between this and that. It's a really big skill we need to cultivate, At the same time as seeing it as progressive, organic, gradual, one step at a time, incremental, step by step, slowly, slowly. This is very powerful advice, It sounds so simple, but it's pretty powerful. Because part of the function of delusions, all the unhappy states of mind, particularly attachment, they're so fanatic. Yes, you would use that word. They're fanatic. They're very kind of fundamentalist, very absolute, very concrete, very extreme. And they're very painful. Wisdom is more spacious. The virtuous states of mind are more comfortable, more spacious, because they're rooted in interdependence. Delusions are rooted in the mistake of ego grasping. Delusions are rooted in the opposite of dependent arising. When we're more in sync with dependent arising, the mind is more comfortable, more spacious, more generous, more forgiving to ourselves as well as others, Yeah. What else, darling people? What else want to talk about? Anything at all? Any old point at all? No? Nothing? Sweethearts? Huh? I always leave it up to you guys to ask me questions. So the first, just to summarize, enthusiasm, which you have to cultivate, it won't come overnight, comes from looking at the benefits of something. So clearly, if we're discussing our Dharma practice, we're trying to see the benefits to ourselves of living in vows, controlling our body and speech, working on our mind. So for Vanessa's example, about giving the money to the stepfather, and she's upset about it and thinking about it and wish she hadn't, and all this drama in her head, So then the enthusiasm here for her, the effort she has to make is to stop thinking those thoughts, to cut it in, to nip it in the bud, not to say one word to her siblings. Otherwise, a few years' time, you'll all be going crazy. They'll all be angry. They'll be upset. They'll be resentful. There'll be fights. You'll all go mad. So she has to see the benefits. This is a really important point. She has to ask herself, what are the benefits to me of stopping having these angry, negative thoughts about giving money to my stepfather. She has to see the simple benefit. This is so simple, it's embarrassing. She'll have a happy mind. She'll be peaceful. And when you know that's the method, and this is the fundamental benefit for wanting to work on our minds in the first place, but don't just say it like all religious, you know, say it with conviction. See the logic that what causes us to be distressed is our own delusions. So the clear benefit of catching your mind when you start being angry with the stepfather, angry with your sister, angry with yourself, whatever it might be, is that the benefit of practicing not being anxious, not being angry, not being attached. It's not like out of guilt. The benefit, the beneficiary is you. Be so happy about this. Don't feel guilty. Oh, that sounds selfish. We don't think this. This is why we don't think this through. We just think, oh, I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to be resentful. Oh, I can't help it. It's not my fault. So we just keep on just in this mire, you know. So we have to see the benefits to ourself, and the benefit of practicing arguing with anxiety, arguing with jealousy, arguing with anger, practicing virtuous thoughts, living in your vows, doing your practice. The beneficiary is you. And how do you benefit? The most simple level is your mind becomes more content. I mean, surely this is what we all want. This is called happiness. A happy mind is a mind that's less attached, less anxious, less angry, less depressed, more kind, more wise, more compassionate. That's happiness. Happiness isn't a cake or a boyfriend. Happiness is literally coming from having virtuous, positive, optimistic thoughts. Please hear these words. When you see the benefit, then you will want to work on your mind. You will want to live in your vows. You will want to do your practice every day. We're not talking compassion yet. We're talking to yourself. You have to see the benefit to yourself. Do not underestimate this. And the more you hear the benefits, the more you want to practice it. If there's no benefit, then why would you stop being angry? Why would you stop trying to be less anxious if you don't see any benefit? So you have to hear the benefit. Then you have enthusiasm. Yes, Anna.
Venerable, we have a question from Dilia, which is, what is forgiveness? How do I forgive when I'm not there?
When I'm not there, what do you mean, darling? I need
yeah.
that. Dilia, you speak to me, sweetheart. Talk to me, darling. Hello, happy to see you. Talk to me, Dilia.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I had an incident with a cousin, and he iced me out and gave me the silent treatment.
He what, darling? So he was kind of a passive aggressive with you mean?
Extremely. And he triangulated with my mother and told her all about it instead of telling me.
Oh God, criticizing you, you mean? Saying something that you did bad, you mean?
So he's coming, he lives in San Francisco. He's coming to town next week. And I don't know
how to handle it.
No, I don't.
That's a very good point. It's a really good point, Dilia. So you mean, so you and your family are where you are, and he's somewhere else, and he's coming to see you all. He's coming to see the family.
Yeah, well, he's not coming to see me. He's coming to a wedding of a cousin that lives in the area.
Okay, so you'll see him.
Maybe. I don't know. He probably won't even call me.
Oh, but you won't be at the wedding.
I can't. I work, so I won't be there.
Okay, so then, the cousin, he's a cousin, right?
Yes.
So basically, you found out from your mum that he has criticized you to her. She told you, did she?
Yeah, and he, he had good reason to be hurt because, frankly, I did. Well, my father died a couple years ago, and he's a Catholic, and he prays every morning. God bless him. He does that.
Who prays every morning? Who?
Yeah, he does. He gets,
who, darling? Who prays every morning?
My cousin does, not me.
And your cousin is a Catholic, and your father died. So then your cousin's a Catholic. So then what happened?
Well, he prays every morning. He comes up with a card of the dead, and he draws my dad's card every so often, and then he says a prayer, and then he publishes it on, and he sends it to me. And I asked him,
what's the problem with that? So what's the problem with that? You objected to it, did you?
The problem with that?
You objected to that, did you?
I did.
But you objected to him doing it. Why was that? Why did you object to that?
Because I felt like he was doing it from a bad, like a arrogant motivation.
So you told him off for doing this?
I didn't tell him off exactly. I sent him a scripture saying what Jesus said, that when you pray, go to your closet, shut the door.
See. So you're sort of, but implying that it's not appropriate to put it out loud in public.
Yeah, well,
so that's why so Delia, is that why he's upset with you, darling? Is it? Is that
that's why he's upset with me?
So he told your mum about this?
He told my mother, and then he told my mother that he was not speaking to me for 6 months.
Oh, he's made a decision to do that. Okay, that's his trip. Is 6 months nearly over?
It's his trip, but
6 months nearly over?
What?
Is 6 months nearly over, Delia?
Oh no, this is just the second month.
So darling, you've got, so what, so tell me, for your, so when we're not discussing you trying to make your cousin happy, the discussion here is how can we help Delia be happy? So what are Delia's options to help Delia be happy? For her to let go of this. What do you think your options are, darling? How many options do you think you've got?
I can let it go and forgive him and forget it.
And so then what's the other option?
I can try to talk to him and talk it out.
Okay, so what would you like to do?
I'd like
perhaps the second one is a good one. Perhaps you simply have to email him and say that you're really sorry if you said anything that upset him, and you do love him because you're family, and I hope you're doing well. Would you like to do that? Would that be difficult for you to do that, and then let him take it as he wishes? Would that be good for your mind? Do you
see? I'm not there yet.
No, I'm just asking you. That's why I'm not saying you should, Delia. I'm simply putting it out there and asking you what you think of that one. So that's too difficult for you right now, is it?
It wouldn't be sincere.
No, well, I mean, you don't have to be perfectly sincere before you do something. You can try, can't you? You can be sincere in your effort. But the other option, I think, in a sense, Delia, my feeling is for you to let go of it in your mind is actually more difficult. Because, you know, it's really hard to control our thoughts. That means you've got to forgive him in your mind. You've got to let go of the anger. You've got to start seeing him as good. That's even more difficult than doing something actual, like a simple little email meaning well. And then at least for yourself, you feel good that you did something positive. As to whether he accepts it or not, that's his problem. My feeling is that's almost easier for you. I mean, saying it's sincere, of course, you're not totally sincere yet, but you want to be sincere. And it's when you sometimes can do a proactive action, when you actually can do something, it's very good for your mind. You'll feel very good about yourself. It's just a thought. I'm not trying to ask you to be a saint, but you don't have to just reply. You just a little email, one sentence, and I hope you're happy. And then you'll feel a relief in your heart. In a sense, I think that could almost be easier than having this big struggle in your own head to let go of it, as you say, because letting go of things is pretty difficult. Are you with me in my thinking? You've got to start somewhere.
I don't know how to heal it, though. I don't know how to fix it.
What, darling?
I don't know how to fix this.
No, Delia, there's two things. One is helping yourself feel better. The other is helping him. So this could help him, but that's up to him whether he wants to come to the party and accept your words. That's what you're trying to heal. There's two parts of it. There's you and there's him. First step, you will definitely feel better about yourself if you could do that. And then it might have the bonus of also being helpful to him. That's up to him though, darling. If he's going to be stubborn and not forgive you, that's his problem. Then you can feel better about yourself because you tried. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying.
So just think about that, darling, because then the other option, to let go of it, that's quite difficult.
Yes.
Just really get your mind to change and really just think I'm going to only have happy thoughts about him and love my cousin, whatever happens, happens, in a sense. But by doing something, that can kind of almost cut across it. And you will be sincere. You do wish him well. You know, you are sorry if you said something that maybe hurt him. And that's not so difficult sometimes. So think about that, darling. Think about that. But there's two things. One is to help yourself be more happy, and two is it could be a bonus if it helps him. You can't force it to help him. He has to want to be helped. He has to want to do his part. You get my point here? But at least you reached out, and you will be the beneficiary of that. It'll make you feel very good about yourself.
Okay.
It's just a thought. It's just, I'm not saying you should, but it's just a way of thinking about it. So you think about that. You think about that. Okay.
Yeah. Easier to
Okay.
make it a small step than a,
That's right. And then just
In a
see
large
where it
one.
goes. See where it goes. You open the door,
yeah, it doesn't hurt.
I
I
think
can
about
always
it.
shut it back again.
No, that's right, exactly. But think about it, darling. Okay, thank you, Delia. Very helpful. So, sweetie pies, it's time to go. As usual, 1 whole hour gone like a dream. Thank you, everybody. I hope there's been food for thought. Never give up. Keep practicing. Keep going. It's kind of, and you can see all these points we're bringing up. We're all familiar with them. It's a question of being very logical, very clear, very accountable. It's possible to work on our mind. It's possible to know our minds well. That's really the Buddhist approach. And I think it's brilliant. We can learn to mold our mind into any shape we like, as Lama Zopa puts it. Okay, sweethearts. Thank you, darlings. See you next, whenever, I don't know, God knows when, whenever.
Thank you, Venerable. See you next
Thank you,
week.
darling. Thanks,
Thank
Anna.